Hey, welcome back. In this video, this final video, what we're going to do is take all of the objects we just spent so many hours modeling, and we're going to put them all in one scene and render it out together. This way you can present it to whoever you need to present it to, or just make a nice render if you want to save it. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Now, first thing that we're going to do is start to import all of the objects in our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and maximize this viewport, F12 on the keyboard to do that. And I'm going to start to import all of the objects that we created earlier. So I'm going to go to File, Import, and we exported our objects as .xsi format. So go ahead and click on .xsi. Now you get these options. These default options are perfectly fine. So I'm going to hit OK. And now XSI wants to know what we're going to go ahead and import. Well, XSI automatically goes to the .xsi folder intelligently, and here's all the objects that we created during the duration of this tutorial. So I'm going to start picking these objects and importing them. So I'll start off with the bullet, click OK, and the bullet's imported now. Now, to import each object, I have to go up to File, go to Import, and so on and so forth. Or I can hit the period key to repeat my last command, which was import. So let's import the flashlight. Okay, hit the period key again to repeat the last command. I'm going to import the grenade. Hit the period key again. Import the knife. I'm going to hit the period key again. I'm going to import the night vision goggles. I'm going to hit the period key and import again, and I'm going to import the rope. Okay, so now we have all of the objects in our scene. And if we switch our shading mode to shaded mode, switch our shading view to shaded mode, we'll see here's all the objects in our scene. These are all the objects that we created during the duration of this full tutorial and modeled out and exported in .xsi format. So these are assets that I can now use in different scenes for different projects. Okay, so you notice that the objects are the wrong proportions. These objects right now are not the correct sizes in relation to each other. So some objects are going to look too small, some are going to look too big. So we're going to go ahead and fix that now. Okay, let's hit 8 to open up the Explorer view, and you'll see a list of all the objects in our scene. Here they are, all 6 objects we modeled, and this one should have been called NVG. Let me go ahead and rename that by hitting F2 on the keyboard and renaming it to NVG. There we go, for short for night vision goggle or goggles. Okay, let me go back to the Explorer. And what I want to do now is I'm going to start hiding some of these things. That way I don't clutter up my screen here. There was a stupid dog barking. So we're going to edit that out of the video, edit that part out of the video. We're picking up and starting again in 3, 2, 1. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hide some of these objects that are cluttering up our screen here. So I'm going to take the rope, the night vision goggles, the knife, the grenade, and I'm holding on shift while I select these, as well as I think I'm going to go ahead and leave the flashlight. I want to leave 2 objects so that I can scale them to proportion in relation to each other, and I'll scale the rest of these objects based on those 2 objects. So if these 4 objects selected, hit H on the keyboard to hide them, and that doesn't delete the objects, it just temporarily hides them, and you'll see this small yellow H next to the icon for each one of these objects we hid. That's to show you very quickly in the Explorer that those objects are hidden from view. If you hit H again with those objects selected, they'll become unhidden, and now they're viewable in your viewport. But I'm going to go ahead and hide them, close the Explorer, we don't need it for now. Okay, so here's the bullet, and if we hit plus on the keyboard to sub-D this object and make it nice and smooth, there it is. Flashlight's already smooth out. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and scale these 2 objects in relation to each other. Obviously, this bullet is a little bit too big in comparison to this flashlight. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. I'm just going to take this flashlight and I'm going to use the scale tool. Edit that out of the video, please. And we're going to start again in 3, 2, 1. I'm just going to take the scale tool here and I'm going to scale up this flashlight by quite a bit. So let's go ahead and scale this flashlight up. And I'm going to scale it to about right there. It's pretty good. I'm going to move it out of the way. And the bullet's fine. I'm going to leave the bullet alone for the time being. Let me hit 8 to open up the Explorer again. I'm going to select the grenade and I'm going to unhide the grenade, and now I'm going to work on the grenade. And right now it's at the lowest subdivision level, you can see, because it looks all blocky. So I'm going to hit plus a few times, or maybe just a couple of times. 2 times seems to be enough. And that's going to go ahead and subdivide this, make it nice and smooth for me. Let's move it out over to the side like this, and let's scale this one up too. So I'm going to scale it to something like this. Looks pretty good, because I'm imagining a human hand on this flashlight. And if you were gripping this flashlight, I'm imagining the back of the hand around here, and the front of the hand where your thumb and your index finger split apart. That part of your hand would be about right here, the part where your index finger and thumb meet up. So with the hand being of that size, from about here to here, the grenade should probably be something like this. Would probably be pretty good. Okay, so I move that out of the way. Maybe I'll scale it up a little bit more. Something like that's pretty good. Let me hit 8 to open up the Explorer again. Now I'm going to select the knife. I'm going to hit H to unhide it, and obviously it's way too small. So let's go ahead and scale it up. What I'm going to do is rotate the knife over onto its side like this, and then like this. So basically 90 degrees in the x-axis and 90 degrees in the z-axis. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this knife and place it relatively close to the flashlight, and I'm going to scale it based on the flashlight. And the flashlight's really going to help me here, because the grip for the flashlight and the knife can pretty much be very close to each other in terms of the size. So something like that. And right now it's at the lowest subdivision level, you can tell because it looks blocky. So I'm going to hit plus a couple of times and smooth it out like this. Okay, so you can clearly see the size comparison there, and I think in terms of size it's pretty good. Maybe a little bit smaller, or no, I think I had it right. Okay, I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna say is pretty good, at least for now. I'm gonna hit 8 to open up the Explorer again, pull up the night vision goggles, hit H to unhide them. They're blocky right now, so I'm gonna hit plus on the number pad of the keyboard a couple of times, just 2 times, to smooth it out. And based on the size of these other objects, these night vision goggles are going to have to be bigger. Probably something like this. Maybe rotate them. And in terms of size, it's a little bit hard to judge. But maybe if we scale it up to about... I think that if we scale it out to about right here, it's probably going to be pretty good. So I'm going to say right there. Now I'm going to hit 8 again one last time, grab the rope, hit H to unhide the rope, and there's the rope that we made earlier. Okay. Now how big should the rope be? Well, the rope is pretty arbitrary because there's different sizes of ropes. There's really big thick ropes, and then there's really thin ropes, all the way down to a really thin shoelace. So it's really hard to determine because it can really be any number of sizes. There's really no specific size for a rope. It can really be pretty much any length and any diameter or thickness. So I'm going to make it something like this. I think it's going to be pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it at that. Now the bullet, I'm looking at it, and I think it looks a little bit too big. Assuming that the hand would go from here to about here on the flashlight, that bullet looks a little bit too big. So I'm going to scale it down just a bit. Something like this is probably going to look a lot better. And I have one for reference right in front of me in real life. So I'm kind of holding it and seeing the proportions of it compared to how it fits in the palm of my hand. And I'm going to go with something like this. It's probably going to be pretty good. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to leave it like that. Good. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some kind of a plane, some kind of a floor or table, some kind of surface to make this stuff sit on top of. So that's what I'm going to do now. There was a dog barking, so we got to edit that out of the video. Start again in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I think the bullet looks pretty good right there. And what we need to do is we need to create some kind of surface. Some kind of surface where all of these objects can sit on top of. It could be a floor, table, pretty much anything. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to Primitive, Polygon Mesh, and pull up a grid. And let's turn the subdivisions to 1 and 1. We don't need so many subdivisions. Now in terms of the actual size, the length and the U and the V, we're going to need something bigger. So let's close that PPG. Let's just use the scale tool and scale this guy up pretty big. Something like that's pretty good. Okay, not bad. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to start to place these objects to sit realistically on top of this surface. So let's start to do that. Let's start with the bullet here. What I'm going to do is hit F12 to go back to my 4 viewports, and I'm going to use the right viewport here to place this on top of the table, so to speak. But right now everything's cluttering my screen, so I'm going to go up to the camera icon. I'm going to click on Isolate Selection, and the table sits on this thick black line, which is 0 on the grid. Fucking dog was barking. Edit that out of the video. Start again in 3, 2, 1. So what we need to do here is go ahead and place this bullet where it needs to go. So let's rotate it on its side first of all, like this, and let's place it right on top of that black line. So right there's pretty good. And if we go back to our camera viewport here, we can see it's placed nicely right on top of the table. So that's good. Now let's go ahead and place some of these other objects. Like the flashlight, for example, right now is not on top of the table. So let's do the same thing. Let's go to the right viewport. Let's get out of Isolate Selection mode. There's our flashlight. Let's go back to Isolate Selection mode so we can work just on the flashlight. Move it up. Now you can see that the flashlight, when placed like this, is obviously not going to make sense because this back part's not touching the table. So what we're going to do is simply rotate it a bit. We're going to try to get it on the table. Now, an easier way of doing this is the following. Let's go back to the camera viewport. I'm just going to quickly knock this down in subdivision levels all the way. We're going to go over here to Isolate Selection. And what I want to do is move the pivot point, which is the manipulator here, and place it back here. So I can rotate based off of this part back here. And the way I'm going to do that is pretty simple. I can hold down the Alt key, and now you see something happens to my manipulator. And now my mouse cursor says the word snap underneath it. What I can do is grab that manipulator and drag it with the left mouse button. And I can place it anywhere I want. Now to snap it, let's just click right here in this area, and you'll see that the pivot point snaps to that area right there, or that point that we were just clicking on. So now if we go back to the right view, we can see our pivot points placed right there perfectly. We can move this up. Let's subdivide this actually first. That way we can get it nice and smooth. And now let's rotate based on that position there. And if you want, we can switch to a shaded view so it's easier to see. And there we go. That's pretty good. So once you have it positioned right there, let's click on this little X here to get out of Isolate Selection mode. And there we go. The flashlight is nicely placed on top of our table. Perfect. Okay. Now let's grab the knife and do the same thing for the knife. So let's go to a right camera viewport. Get out of Isolate Selection mode, and then we'll go back into it with the knife selected. Move the knife up like this. And let's get this knife. Let's get a correct pivot point for the knife. So let's go to isolate selection to camera viewport with the knife selected. I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to click right here in this area to snap my knife to that point there. I'm going to go back to my right side view here. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and just rotate that just a little tiny bit. It's not even a lot really. It's a really small amount. Something like that is pretty good. Okay, that looks fine. Get out of isolate selection mode, and now the knife is right on top of the table. Now let's pick the night vision goggles, get out of isolate selection mode, then go back into it with the night vision goggles selected. And let's go ahead and place these nice night vision goggles where they're supposed to go. Okay, so let's rotate them. And we have a pretty good pivot point already by default. So I'm going to keep this pivot point. And right there looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks pretty neat. Okay, that looks good enough. Now the grenade. We can also hit this refresh button up here with the 2 arrows, and then we don't have to get out of the isolate selection mode. Now for the grenade, I want to place it a little bit differently. I want to rotate it so it's on its side, but at the same time I want to rotate it this way, or maybe this way. Yeah, I like this way better. Let's place it down here on the table. There we go, that's pretty good. Let me go to my camera viewport here. Let me go to a front view so I can see this a little bit better. Go to isolate selection. And we can see that we need to rotate it a little bit more this way. And this probably means that in our side view, yeah, we're going to have to rotate it this way. Okay, now let me go to my camera viewport. Okay, that's pretty good. Maybe we'll rotate it this way. And you can pretty much place this stuff however you want. Click on the refresh button again. We got to move this up and sit the rope on top of the table. So it's probably going to go about right there. It's pretty good. Okay, excellent. So the rope is on top of the table. There it is. Okay, so we got all the objects positioned. Now, I don't want to have just one bullet. Just so this looks a lot nicer and a little more varied, I'm going to have a bunch of bullets. First thing I'm going to do is rotate this bullet a little bit just to give it a little bit more variety. Then I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate this bullet. I'm going to place it right about here. I'm going to rotate it maybe like this. Then I'm going to hit Control D again. And it's going to go ahead and rotate it again, but I don't want that, so hit delete. Instead, hit Control Alt and D to duplicate without repeating the transform. We'll just transform it ourselves. Place it something like that. Control Alt Delete. Control Alt and D. I'm going to rotate it, give it some more randomization here. Something like that. And what I also want to do is take maybe one of these bullets and make it so that it's standing on the table. So what I'll do is I'll go up here to transforms. I'll go to reset rotation. Then I'm going to come over here in my right viewport and place it so that it's standing right on top of the table. So we'll have a few bullets actually standing on their ends. And that one didn't come out too good. Control Alt D to duplicate. Maybe I'll place that one there. Control Alt D to duplicate. And maybe that one will go back there. Something Like that's pretty good. So they look a little bit more random now. Okay, good. Now flashlight, I don't like the way it's just sitting there like that, so I'm going to take it and maybe rotate it this way like that. I'm going to get this knife and bring it close to the bullets. And I'm going to get this knife and I'm going to bring it close to the bullets. Maybe give it some rotation. Or maybe I'll place it, thinking of a good position for it, something that looks nice. I'm going to go with something like that's pretty good. And then the grenade, I'm going to make it so it's kind of rotated this way. And then I'm going to make a duplicate of it. Control Alt and D to duplicate it. I'm going to kind of rotate the duplicate, trying to get like a random type look to this scene. So we got a couple of grenades. And then finally we're going to take the night vision goggles. And where should we put these night vision goggles? Thinking maybe something like this. I like them looking straight ahead like this. Maybe we'll do a render from about right here. Really doesn't matter. Right now I'm just kind of being picky about it or whatnot. You can really place this stuff however you want. You don't even have to go by what I'm doing. And then this rope, I'm just going to take this rope and maybe I'll place it back here. Kind of want something to be in the middle there. So let me see if I take maybe some of these bullets, or maybe not bullets. Let's take another grenade. The more the merrier. You can never have too many grenades, right? And I'll place that grenade. I'll probably place it about right here, like this. It's right there up next to, close to the knife. And I want to be able to see more of the flashlight, so I'm actually changing my mind and rotating the flashlight maybe this way, like this. Okay. And I don't like where the rope is because you can barely see it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the rope about here. And then maybe make this a little bit interesting by moving the grenade and placing it in between the rope about right there. Okay, good. So I'm just rotating around here and making sure that the grenade's not piercing through the rope or anything. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So our render's going to be something like this. If you hold down Q on the keyboard, you can activate the render region tool. That's where everything's going to go. And there's nothing special about this render. This render looks pretty disgusting, to be honest with you. But that's okay because it's just the default render. As you can see, it looks exactly like our viewport. So, we're going to fix that now using Mental-Ray inside of XSI. Now, this isn't a rendering tutorial, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bonus and show you how to render this out pretty nicely and do a nice clay render real quick here inside of Softimage XSI using, of course, the built-in powerful renderer Mental-Ray. So let's go ahead and do that right now.